This story is not about me, but it's about my father. In 1975, my dad was 11 years old and living in Leeds with his mother and stepfather. And for some pocket money, he would do a paper route every morning, very early. He left the house in the dark, being it was October, it was still dark as usual, and went to collect the papers, setting off to take his usual route through some playing fields, essentially a public park, but not very well kept one. But this morning was a particularly dark and gloomy one, and as he approached the shortcut he usually took, there seemed to be something off about it. So much that it genuinely freaked him out. It freaked him out just to be there. He decided to take his time and go the long way around, just to avoid the park. And he thought nothing of it for the rest of the morning. When he got to school after his paper route, everyone was freaked out. And upon asking his friends what was going on, they told him that this woman had been murdered with a hammer and stabbed in the neck earlier that morning in the same playing fields that he decided not to go through, and on the same pathway too. Probably just a major coincidence, but a very lucky one at that, because the time he was on his route was the apparent time that the crime was happening. This turned out to be the first of 13 gruesome murders committed by the notorious Peter Sutcliffe, who's also known as the Yorkshire Ripper. I'm glad my father didn't go that way that morning. I work overnight shifts at my job, and tonight just happened to be my night off. So I stayed up and got ready for the next night. It was about 1 a.m. and one of my friends who lives a town over from me hit me up on Snapchat and said he just got off of work. He asked me what I was doing. I told him I was just going to stay up and stay at home, but I was getting hungry and I was going to see what was on DoorDash. He told me he was going to do the same. I opened DoorDash and saw that the only things that were open were McDonald's, White Castle, and Taco Bell. I decided to try Taco Bell this time since usually they weren't open this late, and I guess they finally hired enough staff to work the closing shift. I ordered the grilled cheese burrito box. In about 5 minutes of us waiting on my order, was finally accepted by the dasher, which is usually pretty quick at this time of night around there. My friend texted me back on Snapchat and said that he not only ordered the same thing that I did, but the same dasher I had also picked up his order. Our dasher would be going to my friend first though, so my friend and I were feeling a little silly, so we got an idea. We both have doorbell cameras and we plan to greet her through the microphone with our secret greeting. "How do you like that, Goose?" So she get confused with my friend at first, but when I said it at my place, she figured out her customers are friends in real life. Taco Bell made our orders pretty fast, and in 10 minutes, our dasher was headed to us. After my friend's order was dropped off, he sent me the Ring video. Our dasher was a middle-aged white lady in an orange sweatshirt with short, slightly uncombed dark hair and wore glasses. She looked like a substitute teacher who got out of a hard day of work. I heard my friend asking her, "How do you like that, Goose?" She looked confused at first and replied, "That what?" My friend replied and the video glitched, and I didn't hear what he said, and all I heard was the dasher unenthusiastically chuckle lightly and say, "You're welcome," and walk off screen after she left his food. I assumed our dasher was one to take a joke, so I already knew what to expect. So I kept opening and closing my DoorDash app every few seconds, watching her advance on the map while messaging my friend. However, my friend was not messaging me. When she was on my street, I got my Ring app ready. Now I live in a townhome, and my bedroom is on the second floor, on the same side as the front door. So I have no garage, and my street is just a parking lot that just leads to a dead end. I watch as a white beat-up Volkswagen blasting loud music drives past my house and parks a few spaces down. But my dasher took about 2 minutes to get out of her car after she turned it off. I found that a little odd, as all I ordered was a grilled cheese burrito box and nothing else. Then I saw her walk up, and she was putting the order down. I asked her, through the camera, "How do you like that, Goose?" She just looked up at the camera and stared for a second, and smiled and then laughed. She paused and said,
"Oh, you know, a broken neck."
That caught me off guard, so I just froze and just thought of the best way to finish it up.
"Okay then, have a good night."
As soon as I saw her walk out of sight, I ran downstairs and I grabbed my food. As I opened the door, however, I saw the same Volkswagen had moved a few spaces over just right next to my car and in front of my door. I saw this and I immediately grabbed my food and shut the door. Not even 5 minutes after getting back upstairs, I start eating my food and I hear some angry shouting outside in the parking lot. I recognized the voice to be from my Dasher, so I put my food down and I peeked out my window. I really wish I didn't, because the shouting stopped and I saw her standing there looking right up at me with this cold blank stare and her hands to her side. Good thing I was staying up all night, because that was the scariest shit I'd seen. I turned out all the lights upstairs and I waited. I wasn't too worried about her trying to hurt me, because I'm a pretty big guy. It could probably take her if it came down to it. But instead, I guess I was a little naive and texted the Dasher trying to explain to her that it was all just a joke, if that's what she's upset about, and didn't want any trouble. But I got no response. I was relieved when I heard her car start up and play loud music and then drove off. My friend then texted me and I told him everything that happened. And he told me that she did the same thing and started shouting random incoherent things in his driveway until one of his neighbors came outside to confront her, and that they were calling the police. And they came to check on my friend to see if he was okay, which is why he took so long to get back to me. I did reach out to DoorDash customer service and complained about her odd behavior, but besides getting refunded for my cold food and my chalupa having the wrong meat, I didn't hear if she was dealt with. I honestly have no idea if she was just having a bad day or on drugs, or just one of the crazy people who comes out during the witching hour. But after looking into that scary cold gaze of hers, I think I'm gonna leave my DoorDashers alone on the doorbell camera, especially after hours.
Want to be part of the stories? Join my Patreon, and I'll draw you or two characters of your choice as part of the horror universe I create. With exclusive rewards like shoutouts and custom art, you'll directly support the channel while becoming a unique part of the content. Check out the tiers and join the community today.
When I was 13, I was walking home from school. It was a Friday and both my parents were working, and my brother was still at school. It started to rain and I had no umbrella. The next thing I knew, a car came along and slowed down. The driver was a guy in his early 30s, and he said,
"Hey Elaine, jump in. I'll give you a lift."
I told him my name wasn't Elaine. He apologized and he said I looked like this girl named Elaine, and offered to give me a lift anyway. I knew this was dodgy, so I said,
"No thanks. My house is just right there."
And I pointed to a random house nearby. Then I quickly walked into the entrance of the house and hid there for a few minutes, waiting for him to leave. When I walked back out, I realized that he had just pulled over on the side of the road and was getting out of his car. He knew it wasn't my house. I dropped my school bag and I just took off running. He followed me. I ran all the way to my house when I remembered I didn't have my keys and nobody was home. I was absolutely terrified. I started banging on the front door and all of a sudden it opened. My brother was standing there. He had stayed home sick from school that day. I was crying so much that I could barely talk, and I just kept pointing at the man coming up the road. My brother grabbed a baseball bat and ran outside. As soon as the man saw my brother, he ran back to his car and jumped in and sped off. We didn't manage to get his license plate number, so he was never found. But I'm sure he wanted to kidnap me and possibly hurt or kill me. It was very scary, and I was so lucky that my brother was there. Or I might have just become another statistic. I used to work at a Boy Scout summer camp. Every week I had to take a big group of A few years ago, I went on vacation on one of the islands. It wasn't my first visit there, as I had worked there previously within the culinary industry. I never had any terrible encounters with anyone up until my vacation. I had just left my job and I needed a mini getaway before going back job hunting. So I booked a stay at a small hotel to relax and unwind alone, which was supposed to be about 10 days. On the second day, I decided to go and venture out into a new area to do some shopping and visit a new restaurant. I usually felt comfortable doing this, as I stated that I never had any negative experience before. To my surprise, there was this guy lurking on the sidewalk, but I didn't pay him any attention. I'm a very petite and reserved lady, so when he hollered, I responded by saying hi, and I kept on my journey. I'm not the type to make small talk, as I'm very skeptical of people. Apparently, he didn't like that. He must have preferred that if I stuck around, I might as well socialize with him. I guess he had other plans in mind. Anyway, I forgot about him, and on my return, he was still there. This time, he wasn't as perky as before. He kept hurling insults and decided to follow me. This complete stranger was literally speed walking behind me and trying his best to embarrass me. At this point, I'm petrified and shaken. My room was located on the first floor of the hotel, which had me so paranoid that this lunatic would attack me. That night, I never slept a wink. I called my mother back at home, and she advised me to change my flight and come home. I considered it, but I thought that I would let this psychopath win if I ran off. I decided to stay a bit longer. On the third day, I went into the city to go into some different restaurants and do some more shopping. On the fourth day, there he was, loitering in his usual spot on the sidewalk. As soon as he saw me, he yelled that he should do something nasty to me for ignoring him, among other threats. I didn't respond and just kept ignoring him. I felt so sick and I just wanted to vomit. What he said still haunts me to this day, but I'm not going to go into what he said because it was pretty graphic. I can't believe someone could be so disgusting. Anyway, when I got home, I called a friend to stay the night with me, and he did. I felt way better, but I was still paranoid. When I had to go out the next day, I prayed to God that I wouldn't see that guy again. Luckily for me, I didn't, and I enjoyed my full stay. I didn't know if he got arrested or whatever happened to him, but I was grateful I never saw him again. When I was younger, we had quite a large house. It was shaped like an L, but the L was cut into a hill, so the bottom part of that L had a downstairs, which was almost underground. It had windows facing out, but a lot was either in the hill or under another floor. I had the room from the bottom part of the L from the age of 13 and up. My room had two doors, one that opened out to kind of the rumpus room, and the one to the in-suite. It was always creepy as shit. But being a skeptic, I dared anything there to do something to me. So anyways, I grew up fine, but I could never sleep unless both doors were shut. When my parents went away, I'd break the rules and bring my dog in to sleep on my bed. I woke up a few times late to see her alert and staring at the door to the rumpus room. Occasionally, I'd hear clawing at the screen of the window, but we had dogs, cats, horses, and local bush turkeys, foxes, etc. I figured if something was there, that shouldn't have been my dogs. So fast forward 5 years, I bring a new girlfriend to my home to meet my parents. She slept in my old room and she woke up screaming between 12 a.m. and 3 a.m. twice out of the 3 nights that we stayed there. I've been with her for 5 years since, and it's only happened in that room. She won't sleep in that house anymore. My parents let my younger sister move into the room about 4 years ago. She asked me recently if I ever heard scratching on the window late at night. Both of the dogs we had, plus the cat and the horses, are all dead. It being roughly 10 years later, so the scratching is likely independent of the pets, unless the local animals are messing with us. She also said that she can't sleep unless both doors are shut, and she'll often put door stops under both doors, so if she hears it, either of the doors open. She Googled some stuff and decided to sage the room, and says she's had hectic nightmares since and woke up screaming late at night a few times. For reference, she was about 14 when the night terrors happened with my girlfriend, so we never told her. As I said, I'm a skeptic, but it's still pretty creepy.
Dmer Files.
Want to be part of the stories? Join my Patreon, and I'll draw you or 2 characters of your choice as part of the horror universe I create. With exclusive rewards like shoutouts and custom art, you'll directly support the channel while becoming a unique part of the content. Check out the tiers and join the community today.
I'd recently met up with my older brother, whose name is Timothy. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and we were reminiscing about memories we had. One topic that came up was, have either of us experienced anything paranormal? Timothy told me he only had one experience, and that was about 20 years ago when he was 19 and worked at a store called Blockbuster. I will tell this story through the perspective of Timothy. I was late for work one day, and my boss told me to stay late, just to make up for being late. That night when we closed, everyone went home, and my boss gave me a list of things to do before I could leave. And then he left me alone to lock up when I finished. One of the tasks was to sit in the back room and rewind movies to the beginning that people had forgot to do before returning them. I had finished rewinding the movies and put them back in their cases, and then turned off the TV. As I was looking at my to-do list, I heard something fall from the shop floor. I walked around and looked for what the noise could have been. I saw video cases on the floor. It looked like someone knocked them off the shelf because I couldn't see how they would have fell down in the first place. I picked them up and put them back where they were. After putting the video cases back, I heard a noise coming from the back room.
I know you ain't smoke weed. I know this. But I'm gonna get you high today. Cause it's Friday, you ain't got no job, and you ain't got shit to do.
It sounded like people talking. When I went back there, the TV was on and the movie was playing. I was really confused and scared. I had just turned the TV off and had just removed the movie from the tape player. I nervously turned off the TV and took the movie out of the VHS player for what felt like a second time. I then went out to the shop floor to tidy the movies up that were on display, and then I'll lock up and I'll head home. As I was tidying up, I noticed there was a movie case on the floor again. It was a few of them, the same ones I had picked up a few minutes earlier. I made sure to put them back properly so they couldn't fall down again. I felt like I wasn't alone that night. I just wanted to leave, and I was thankful for when I finished my task and left to go home. The next day when I went to work, my boss was annoyed with me. He asked me why I left the TV on in the back room, and why were there movie cases on the floor. I asked him what cases were on the floor. He told me, and they were the same ones that had fell down twice before. I told him I didn't leave a mess, and that I cleaned everything and turned the TV off when I was finished with it. He didn't believe me. My boss was mad at me the whole day. I told a few colleagues about what happened with me, and one of them said they had a similar experience when they worked late past closing time. They told me things seemed to be moving and falling down on their own, and also it felt like they were being watched. I still think to this day that whatever I experienced was paranormal. My name is Karen, and I'm a stay-at-home mom and in charge of my neighborhood watch program. In 2006, we had a surge of new people moving into our neighborhood. It was definitely changing around here. There were times when I'd wish people would just move back to where they came from. Out of nowhere, the house burglaries and overall crime skyrocketed. I felt responsible due to my high position within our neighborhood. I'm a very important person. My husband Chad and his friend Kyle started to get involved in the neighborhood watch due to the influx of crime. There was a night where Kyle came running inside our house frantically, telling us to load up because he saw someone who looked suspicious running around the neighborhood with a hoodie and shorts on. Kyle told us the direction that he was running and where we could cut him off at. We went to a location where we could wait for this guy to run past. Chad then said something very disturbing to me. He said that he's tired of these people moving to his neighborhood and taking over, that he needs to make something happen, make it safe again. We heard someone running, then Kyle and Chad jumped from behind the bushes, and the man stopped running. Kyle asked the man, "Who are you? Where are you going? And where are you coming from?" The man looked confused and pulled off his headphones from his ear. The man then reached in his pocket. I screamed gun, and Kyle pulled his AR from the bushes, pointed at the guy, and squeezed the trigger. But it jammed. The man pulled his phone out, and that's all, just his phone. Then he ran away. Kyle and Chad yelled out loud that he better run away and go back to the city. They also said that the man and his friends won't break into people's houses anymore. The next day we found out that a few teens that lived next door to us that we knew very well were arrested. I was mistaken. So was my husband and his friend. We thought the people committing crimes were the new people from the city that just moved here. It was the teens that grew up here from when they were babies. I always think, what would have happened if that gun didn't jam? There would have been a murdered innocent teenager. It would have been my fault for screaming. Please never judge a book by its cover. I know this isn't scary, but every time I think about it, it terrifies me. I'm going to do the best I can on remembering this event that my cousin told me. This happened in the late 80s. A first cousin of mine and his friend were in the park when they saw a guy doing some weird things that he shouldn't be doing in public by a bridge, if you know what I mean. Being young teens, they started making fun of the guy. I believe he tried to get them to come join him, but eventually he chased them and vowed that if he caught them, he would kill them. They went home and told my uncle, who's 6'5" and looked pretty fit at the time. He came back to the park and looked for the guy with them. I don't recall exactly what happened after, but the cops were called. The guy was found and charged with enticing a minor, or something along that line. As my aunt told me, in 1991, she and my uncle started getting calls from reporters. They were asking about charges against a guy in the news, if his name was familiar, and what occurred with their son. You see, my aunt, uncle, and their 3 kids lived in Wisconsin. The guy my cousin and his friends ran into was none other than Jeffrey Dahmer. My cousin ended up on an episode of The Phil Donahue Show with Tracy Edwards, the guy who was intended to be the victim but escaped and ended up getting Jeffrey Dahmer caught. Now I'm curious. I needed to call them and get a refresher of events since that was almost 30 years ago. I wanted to see if they still had the tape from that show or if something's on YouTube. I remember my cousin talking about this on the Donahue Show and being very nervous. I kind of felt bad for him. But I still think it's crazy that Jeffrey Dahmer almost got my cousin.
Want to be part of the stories? Join my Patreon, and I'll draw you or two characters of your choice as part of the horror universe I create. With exclusive rewards like shoutouts and custom art, you'll directly support the channel while becoming a unique part of the content. Check out the tiers and join the community today.
The story takes place in 1977. My brother was little at the time and had been at a friend's house. I don't remember what the occasion was, but my parents were picking him up. It was late at night in the winter. My parents picked my brother up, load him into the car, and they started driving home. As they were leaving the neighborhood to get to the main road, they see a man come out of the woods with a shotgun, and he got into his van on the side of the road. Now, the area I grew up in was pretty suburban, but folks can be rather redneck. Seeing someone come out of the woods with a shotgun is worrisome, but usually it just means it was a poacher. So Dad, he keeps driving. The man gets into his car and follows my parents into the main road. Still nothing to be worried about. They make a few turns on the way home and it becomes increasingly obvious that the van was actually following them. They pull into the housing plan that we lived in, which was mostly new construction. The van pulls into the plan behind them. At the time, our house was the only finished, occupied house on our street. It was actually a cul-de-sac. The street lights haven't even been turned on yet, so it was pitch black. Winter, cold, and isolated. The van pulls into our driveway behind my dad. Dad gets out of the car, sends Mom and my brother into the house, and tells them to lock the door. He waits till they get inside, then he walks up to the van. He stands at the nose of the car, and he just stares at the man inside. He waits. No questions, no bravado, no nothing. He just stands there and he waits. Very intimidating. Now, what you need to know about my father at the time, he had a full ride scholarship for football in college. Dropped out and decided it would be fun to join the military and volunteered to go to Vietnam instead, because he was bored. He spent the year on some godforsaken little island at a ranger camp. He's an intimidating man, and always has been. Without being overly tall or large, he has a presence. You just don't want to mess with him. He is now much older and somewhat overweight, but in 1977, he must have been something because, without any words being exchanged, the man put his van into reverse and just drove away. The story doesn't end there though. The next morning, it was all over the news. A man had been murdered the night before in the housing plan my parents picked my brother up from. Just a street away, a man had been shot through his living room window with a shotgun. He died on the floor while his wife tried to run away, and his kids were asleep upstairs. The wife led the man through the woods on a chase. They found her body a few hours later in the woods, the same area where my family saw that man come out. It turns out, it was Edward Surratt. He was a serial killer. And that was the man that my father encountered that night. My dad used to tell me this story, although I didn't know the grisly details until I was older. It was one of those listen to your gut lessons. It was in a small town in Indiana, early to mid 1970s. My dad is in middle school, early high school age. His house was about 6 or 7 blocks from the school, so when the weather was nice, he would walk home from school. One day on his walk home, he noticed a guy in a van driving by him slowly. It was a bit strange, but he thought nothing of it. Then it happened again and again. Eventually, the guy driving the van started yelling things at him, usually asking him to buy drugs. This is when my dad recognized the guy as Roger. Roger was about 9 years older than my dad, but my dad was friends with one of Roger's relatives, so he knew who he was. Anyway, the cycle of Roger following my dad for blocks as he walked home and asking him to buy drugs continued for who knows how long. My dad always got this gut feeling that something was deeply off about Roger. He was so afraid that when Roger yelled, he wouldn't even respond. He just stared at the ground until he reached his house. The walks must have seemed like they took forever. My dad was one of those kids who seemed to grow a foot taller over one summer, so he isn't sure if Roger stopped because my dad became more physically intimidating or he just moved on. But either way, he was glad when interactions stopped. But fast forward to Valentine's Day 1977. In a different town, still small and remote, a woman is at home with her son and 3 stepsons. Roger and 3 other men break into her home with shotguns and force her and her boys to lie face down on the floor. Roger and the gang threaten and taunt them for hours before shooting them one by one. One of the shots partially blew off the wig that the mother was wearing. Roger thought her skull was blown off and he assumed that she was dead, so he stopped shooting her. She survived and later described hearing a horrible noise as she lay there, and then realizing that she was hearing the blood drain from her son and stepsons. She described it as almost like a waterfall. Roger and his gang got away with about $40, but it was never about robbery. It was about the thrill of taking a human life. The mother eventually identified Roger and the 3 other men as the perpetrators, with Roger being the ringleader. Indiana didn't have the death penalty at the time, so each man was sentenced to multiple life sentences. But Roger, he recently died in prison. I know that it's unlikely that my dad would have been murdered by Roger had he gotten in the van or brought drugs from him. But the fact that he was so close so often to someone who was capable of doing something like that is very unsettling. When I was about 6 years old, I was over at my uncle's house with him and his girlfriend. He decided he was going to go grab some things at the store. And being a hot summer day, I stayed at his place watching some Disney movie while his girlfriend hopped in the shower. For some context, my uncle lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment. The layout went like this: living room, dining room / kitchen attached to the balcony, and his room and bathroom were in the back. While watching the movie, I peered up and I saw a woman approach through the kitchen. She had long dark hair and looked super pale. She walked out of the kitchen toward the balcony. As she was walking, she stopped and turned her head to me and gave me a stone cold stare of intimidation. She got to the balcony door and just vanished. Being a 6-year-old who didn't know who that was or what was happening, I screamed at the top of my lungs. My auntie rushed out from her shower to find me crying. When my uncle came back, we explained what happened, and he called my grandparents, who stayed in the same apartment complexes. They came over and prayed for me. But the thing is, in my life, I've seen that same exact woman, ghost, spirit, whatever you want to call her. I've seen her about 3 times. I don't know if she's haunting me or watching over me, but every time I've seen her, I don't feel safe.
Want to be part of the stories? Join my Patreon, and I'll draw you or 2 characters of your choice as part of the horror universe I create. With exclusive rewards like shoutouts and custom art, you'll directly support the channel while becoming a unique part of the content. Check out the tiers and join the community today.
I was 24 at the time and driving to work. It was me and my little sister who happened to be working with me overnight doing housekeeping. On our way to work, she got a phone call saying that something was wrong with my niece. She had to call off, which of course is something she did very frequently. I was forced to turn around and drop her back off home, and I had to head to work. Since I had to turn around, I realized I was going to be late, so I had to take a shortcut. Allow me to explain about the area in which my job is. It's pretty much in a big building in the middle of a suburban area, covered in complete darkness. I wanted to speed up to get to work on time, but couldn't because deer tend to jump out in front of your cars out of nowhere. Almost near work, I came to a light and waited for it to turn green, when I felt a slight tap come from a car behind me. I said to myself, "Oh shit, not now." I pulled over to check both my car and the person that hit me. I got out and walked to the car and was asking was he okay, thinking he was falling asleep driving, but he never got out. So I approached the driver door to ask if the person was okay. They just had the window crack enough to just show their head, but they said nothing. I said that there's no damage, and I think I'm just gonna go. As I got near the rear of my car, I heard a car door open. I turned around and seen that it was a guy that got out of the car, but he still said nothing. The next thing I did was something I regret to this day, which was walk back towards him until I noticed something. His hands were extremely pale, and they were white, but his face was black, which seemed off, unnaturally black. I thought it was a mask, but you could see parts of his skin showing. At that point, being in the area I was in made me nervous because I was thinking he was wearing blackface and tapped my car because of my skin color. The moment I was about to walk away, in one swift motion, he grabbed a rifle out of his car and pointed it directly at my head. I kept saying to myself, I was going to die and no one's going to know because I'm all alone. I tried making conversation with that guy, saying, "You don't have to do this." Next, he started crying uncontrollably and hopped in his car and drove off. I stood in darkness near my car, not moving a muscle, just being relieved that I'm alive. I soon got in my car and made it to my job about an hour late. Everyone was asking why I was so late, but I kept the situation to myself and only told my family, who was worried sick. I now work a different shift and get off at night rather than go to work at night, but I avoid any hidden roads when I'm driving home. My name is Amy, and this happened when I was 16. I attended a junior debate competition as a judge along with my other debate buddies from my school. When we got to the hotel, we found out that we had communal showers on each floor instead of private bathrooms. We were fine with it, as we were just too focused on preparing for the competition. The next day, I went to the room for the first competition and met this team that came in early. One of the boys had caught my eye. He was very good looking. It was a while before everything started, so he came up to me to talk. We were having fun and just chatting about our schools when I noticed that a supervisor came in. Every room needed to have an adult supervisor to ensure that the teams were being judged fairly. They didn't wear anything special to set them apart from all the visitors, just normal clothes. This lady looked to be in her late 20s, wearing a dirty flower printed dress. She had messy blonde hair and had bags under her eyes, as if she hadn't slept in days. I noticed an awful smell as soon as she came in. I noticed she kept glaring at me, but I didn't pay any attention to it. After the competition, I went to the hotel and my friend and I decided to shower in the communal bathroom. Suddenly, the lights turned off. I thought it was my friend playing a prank on me, and I yelled at her to turn the lights back on. No one replied. Then I saw a shadow in the front of my stall. I just laughed until she started banging on the door. I was startled and kept quiet until I had enough and yelled, "Hey, quit it." I waited for what seemed like hours, and then I went outside. To my horror, I looked in the mirror and I saw a pair of eyes staring at me from the half-open stall. I screamed and ran back to my room. I told my friend what happened, but she just laughed it off. I tossed and turned the whole night, but eventually went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up to hot air being blown in my face. I was paralyzed, but managed to look in the corner of my eye and I saw it. It was the same woman from the debate competition. Her bloodshot eyes were just staring at me, her smile beaming wide, showing her white but crooked teeth. She had her fingers on my bed, peeping out with just her head. She whispered in a raspy voice, "Stay away from things that are not yours, or I'll cut you." I screamed again, waking my friend up. She saw the woman run outside, leaving the door wide open. My clothes that I had hanging out to dry for tomorrow had cuts in them. My skirt had a huge hole in the crotch, and my white shirt had horror written on it. I called my friend and my parents crying as our chaperone called the cops. They came soon and caught the woman hiding in the fire escape. They arrested her and questioned her. The cops told me that she said I was flirting with her boyfriend. They also questioned the boy that I met. He had no idea who she was, but admitted that he had seen her following him all day. But he thought that she was a supervisor or a chaperone. Turned out she was a schizo, with previous charges of assault. To this day, I never want to go to a communal shower ever again. My grandma's old house was in our family for generations and had a lot of activity. You would catch shadow people peeking around corners at you out of the corner of your eye. One experience I remember clear as day was when I was young. There was a strange woman sitting in a rocking chair in her den, quietly rocking, looking out the window. By the time my grandma came to look, the woman was gone, but the chair was still rocking. I think the all-time absolute scariest moment was back in the day of disposable cameras. Your first shot would be a throwaway shot to make sure it was working. Someone had taken a picture looking into my grandmother's kitchen, and on top of her fridge was a flower arrangement. When we developed the pictures, there was a perfect man's face in the flowers. Not arranged so that when you squint, it vaguely looked like a man. I mean, a full man's face on top of the fridge, blocking the flowers. We were all so scared we destroyed the picture. I wish now we had kept it. It would have been a great conversation piece.
Want to be part of the stories? Join my Patreon, and I'll draw you or two characters of your choice as part of the horror universe I create. With exclusive rewards like shoutouts and custom art, you'll directly support the channel while becoming a unique part of the content. Check out the tiers and join the community today.
Let me start this by saying this was many years ago. However, this is exactly how everything happened in my memory. At the time of this memory, I must have been about 5 or 6 years old. I remember coming home from preschool and going to Blockbuster. For those of you younger than me, that was a place you would go to rent DVDs and VHS tapes when streaming services didn't exist yet. We rented Nanny McPhee for me, and my mum and dad also rented a movie that I wasn't allowed to watch with them. Going to Blockbuster was a normal thing for my family. We usually went 2 to 3 times a week to rent movies. After that, my memory gets foggy. I don't remember exactly what happens, but I remember my mum kissing me goodnight once I went to bed. I was a stereotypical boy who had a race car bed when I was little, and I had lots of stuffed animals. From my memory, I remember having a pastel multicolored dolphin, a cheetah. My mum got it for me. She was a respiratory therapist and worked in the CHETA program, which is a critical care ambulance service at UW-Madison. A large Scooby-Doo plushie, many kitten plushies that came in a packet that my grandma bought me for Christmas, and a life-size, for me as a 5-year-old, SpiderMan stuffed animal, which had glow-in-the-dark eyes. Every night when I went to sleep, I'd choose a few stuffed animals to keep in my bed with me. I don't remember what I chose that night, but I know I didn't choose Spider-Man, because I remember staring at his glowing eyes across the room as I was falling asleep. My mum kissed me goodnight and shut the door. I dozed off and fell asleep, but I ended up waking up. I remember opening my eyes and still seeing Spider-Man's eyes on the other side of the room. So I thought it hadn't been too long since I fell asleep. I stared at Spider-Man's eyes and tried to fall back asleep. As I was staring into his eyes rose upwards and froze. Spider-Man had to have been about 3 feet tall when I had him standing, and I could tell he was standing by himself at this point. From there, the eyes started moving towards me. Obviously, being 5 years old, I screamed. I screamed bloody murder. I don't think I ever screamed that loud in my life. A few seconds later, my mum came bursting into the room. As my mum burst through the door and the light bled into the room, the Spider-Man toy dropped to the floor. It had been about 4 to 5 feet from my bed and walking. As the light of the hallway hit it, it froze and hit the ground. Both my mum and I both saw Spider-Man hit the ground as she opened the door. She ran into the room and asked me what happened. I told her everything, and she immediately grabbed Spider-Man from the middle of my room and took him away. When she came back, she brought her laptop, and we watched the Nanny McPhee DVD that we had rented. My mum slept in my room that night. That night actually started a trend of me and my mum having movie nights in my room here and there, where we would rent movies and watch them in my room on her laptop. We made popcorn and ate candy that we bought from Blockbuster when we rented the movie. We had a garage sale a month or 2 later. My mum and dad ended up selling Spider-Man at the garage sale. They also sold Scooby-Doo at the yard sale, and I remember being very upset about that, because I loved Scooby. I never saw Spider-Man again, but even as a kid, I was thankful for that. After this experience, Spider-Man scared me. This was probably the most vivid memory of my childhood. It's also one of the only memories I have of my parents together before they got divorced when I was 6.
This happened a few months ago during the summer break. My friend was having a birthday party, and he was allowed to invite some friends over. He invited our whole friend group. Their names are Trevor, Jake, Hayden, Will, and my name is Richie. He lived in the country with a lot of hills, dirt roads, and woods, but there wasn't much to do either way. So Keegan, who was running the party in the first place, came up with an idea. As night came, his parents fell asleep, and we were sitting by the fire talking and having fun. Keep in mind, my friend had a big field behind his property, and on the right side was a huge forest. But all you had to do to get back was turn around and walk straight up, and you would meet back in the field. So when we got back, me, Keegan, and Will wanted to explore the woods with flashlights. It was 3 a.m. when we left into the woods. It was dark, and even with the most of the flashlights, it was scary for pretty much everyone. We were walking for a while until we found a steep decline into a small ravine. Even Keegan himself, who claimed he knew the woods, had no idea about it all. Instead of walking down the hill, we decided to just tread on the side until we found a rock formation that was flat and sturdy enough to at least stand on. "Should we walk in?" asked Keegan. "Let's just take the dive," Will said. Keegan and Will dropped down first, taking it slowly all the way to the creek bed. I'll follow behind them quickly. Trevor, being slightly hesitant, looked around at Hayden, and Jake, holding the majority of the flashlights, shook his head and said, "I think we should go back, Hayden." So as the others went off, we were walking down the creek, and then all of a sudden our flashlights died. It was okay because I and Trevor brought our phones. They had low battery, so we decided to leave. As we were walking through the woods to go back to Keegan's house, I saw the tree line to the field that goes back to Keegan's house. But as we got to it, my eyes widened. I saw no house and I saw no field. I just saw more woods and brush that rose to my neck. We just gotta walk further up, Keegan claimed. As we got further up, the weeds got lower, and ahead of us we saw miles of woods and we panicked. We were very confused. It's like the house vanished, then we heard a loud voice. It sounded like people, and it was coming from our right in the dark woods. I said hello, and it was two familiar voices, Jake and Hayden. I asked, "Where are you?" They yelled out that they were lost and the house was gone, and they sound really confused. Me, Keegan, Will, and Trevor panicked, knowing that we were lost and that the house should be here. So we kept yelling so they can follow our voice, and they had to go through prickers. Jake got cut up badly, but they managed well. They finally met up with us, and we were arguing because of the fear of being caught, sneaking out, and being lost for good. Then Trevor said he saw a trail. We walked down there and started following the trail. We heard strange noises and thought it was just the wind. But then we saw something big move, and it made strange noises, and we started walking really fast. Then the noises went away. After 30 minutes, we realized this trail went in circles and kept looping. We started arguing again about what we should do, but Will noticed a beam of light on this mountain. So we all decided to climb it and hope for the best. And to mention, it was miles and miles away. We climbed through the mountain. We all got injured and also went through some poison ivy. We finally reached the top of the mountain, and we were exhausted. It was someone's house that had a beam of light. Keegan said, "I know this house. I know where my house is." So we followed Keegan and finally arrived at his home. We sat in his room talking about how strange this experience was. Every time I think about this, I wonder what happened if we stayed there any longer. We would have died probably, or found out what was lurking in those woods. Was it some predator or something?
Dmer Files.
Want to be part of the stories? Join my Patreon, and I'll draw you or two characters of your choice as part of the horror universe I create. With exclusive rewards like shoutouts and custom art, you'll directly support the channel while becoming a unique part of the content. Check out the tiers and join the community today.